Welcome to Self-Publishing Authors, home for candid talks and honest recommendations, from book editing to book marketing, from author journeys to inspirations. Hosted by Gurhan Demirkan.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Gurhan. I am with Book Selfie, and I am here with this young lady, Myra, and she is actually an author of, well, she brought 3 books, but of course she has more than 3 books, right, Myra?
That's right.
Yes, and we are doing this at Austin. We are in Austin Central Library. At the end of the video, I'm going to put some nice clips of the Austin Library. It is beautiful. You'll see it. It is excellent, actually. And we have a little bit noise outside. Kids are making noise, but that's okay. So, Myra, welcome to our show.
Thank
For
you.
the second time.
Thank
Yes.
you.
We had some trouble, some audio trouble for the first time, but today we got this all squared away. Okay. Can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, I'd like to. My name is Myra McIlvain. I am a teller of Texas tales, actually.
Texas
A writer
Tales.
of Texas tales and a lecturer of Texas tales.
Awesome. Yes. So it's all about Texas.
It is. That's all I know.
Yes. And shall we gather that from the accent, maybe?
Yes, I have always lived in Texas.
Yes. Were you born here?
Yes, I was born in Northeast Texas in a log house. It was a big house, but it was made of logs
Oh.
by my great-great-great-grandparents.
Oh, that's nice. Any of these stories include that?
No.
No?
My stories are about eras in Texas history, but fictional characters move around in my stories, and I never have written about my family.
Oh.
I'm working on something now that my family story made me write, but that's not been published yet. It's finished and with the editor.
With
So
an
we'll see
editor.
what happens.
Yes.
See what
So,
happens.
and I'm going to visit that one more time.
Yeah.
But tell us, what type of novels do you write?
Well, these are historical fiction. They're based in Texas, and they are set, almost all of them, in the 19th century, except this one that just came out in 2020. This is called A Long Way Home, and for some crazy reason, when 9/11 happened, I had to write a story about it. And I wrote about a woman who worked in the North Tower, had planned for years to escape her abusive husband, and when she could make it look as though she had died. And that way he could inherit a lot of money. He was a paraplegic. And so, anyway, when the towers fell, she grabbed her chance to escape and ended up, true to Texas, she went down to the Texas Rio Grande. And so the story goes on to the Rio Grande, but it starts in New York with the fall of the tower.
Okay, so this actually is the only book that starts in New York, but again,
Yes.
ends up in Texas.
And then it ends in Texas a little bit. But the main part of the story takes place down on the Rio Grande in a time when the cartels are starting. Things are getting pretty wild down there. But that's that story. That's the only one that's more or less a modern day story.
Okay. Well, she would have fit in, right? Coming from New York, cartels.
Yes.
And what about these?
Well, now these are stories. This one opens when the early huge wave of Germans came into Texas in 1844. They came in on the Texas coast, and it was just a bare coast at the time, one house, and some of them, or most of them, went in and established the town we know of as New Braunfels and then Fredericksburg. For Texans know those towns. But there was a small group who stayed down on that coast, on that shell beach, and started a seaport. And it developed into a major a seaport that rivaled Galveston. And this opens in the early days when they've just arrived. Many of them, hundreds, are living in tents on that shell beach, waiting for wagons to take them inland. And this goes on as they build the town. And this is a story of a young woman who comes in, and she's abandoned when she was going to tutor a child. And when the child died and the mother died, the father abandoned her. So this Dr. Stein, who had been on the ship coming from Germany, apparently noticed her. And when she was abandoned, he proposed marriage.
Okay.
And so she accepted. Problem was, he did not turn out to be what she expected in a husband.
That's when the story starts.
And that's when the story starts.
Yes. So we got to read this. The doctor's wife, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
go get it.
Yes.
Yes. What about this one?
Well, now this is a continuation. In between this is a book with another publisher we cannot discuss, but it also goes on with the German settlement on this in this town that became known as Indianola. A series of 2 hurricanes blew in, and the last one in 1886 left behind a ghost town, and so the people down there left. And that's really true. That happened. They left. But my characters in the book went up to what is known as Washington County, which is in the central portion of Texas, and settled in a plantation area there. The man who is introduced in this book, because Amelia meets him.
Amelia?
She is the protagonist. And,
okay.
I will not tell you any more about him there, other than she does meet him, and he is the protagonist in this book.
Okay.
And it opens with him. He has prided himself on freeing his slaves before the Civil War.
Okay.
And was just really feeling like an upstanding gentleman until his son, who was leaving for Harvard Medical College, approached him and said, "Was my mother a slave?"
Oh.
Because he had been hearing things. And he had to admit that he had fathered this child by a slave, and she died, and he let the boy grow up, and the neighbors grow up, assuming he was white.
Okay.
And so the story is the boy goes off to medical school, comes back a brilliant doctor, and decides to live as a black man.
Okay. Well, yes. So is there a book in between? Or
yes, there's a book in between, and it's with another publisher.
Okay.
And so
that's
I'm
not
sorry.
Book Selfie, right?
No, I can't get them to come to Book Selfie.
Yes, that's okay, though.
Yeah.
One of these days.
Right.
Okay, so these are great books.
Yeah.
And Waters Plantations. Is that the last name, Waters?
That Waters, yes. His name is Waters, and that's the plantation.
Okay.
There.
So how did you start? How did you start writing these books? The story of yourself.
Well, I lived down on the Texas coast in the 1970s, and I was very taken by that old ghost town that had been Indianola. The only thing that was left when I was there in the 70s was the Shell Creek foundation of the courthouse. Shell Creek was they used the shell on the beach to make this concrete, and they used it for a lot of the structures. Well, the only thing that was left was, I guess, about this high above the water of this foundation of the courthouse, just lapping, the shores were lapping against it. And then there was an old cistern, because the only way they got water was a cistern. And that survived, also made of shellcrete, huge thing that probably went down 10 feet in the ground. And of course, the cypress sides were missing. They had cypress on the sides. The only way they got water was rainwater that was collected in these cisterns.
Yes.
So that, and then the old cemetery where whole families had died from yellow fever and then from the first hurricane. So all that just fascinated me. And then I moved to Austin and began to write historical markers. And as I wrote all these, those markers you see on the side of the road, and in cemeteries and on buildings, I wrote those for 6 years. And all the time I did that, I kept reading about these amazing Germans that came in and how they worked and how they built schools and dance groups and shooting groups and all kinds of societies. And I was impressed by them. And I decided I had to write about those people and how they had started that amazing town, and it thrived, rivaled Galveston, until the first hurricane hit it in 1875. And then it finally was destroyed completely.
Ghost town.
Just a ghost town.
Yes.
So anyway, that's what got. Right? Now today there is kind of fishing village. People have built those little houses on stilts so they can fish there. And the old courthouse foundation has eroded so much on the beach that it's out in the bay. You can't see it anymore.
You can't see it anymore.
No.
Okay.
You can see the cistern. It's still there. But a lot of people, after they read the books, like to go down and see the place,
Of
see
course,
just
yeah,
what it was like.
yeah. So, how long does it take to just write one of these?
It usually takes me about 2 years. I do a lot of work on the history, um, and then the fictional characters fit within what's going on
Okay.
in that era. But this last book that I'm finishing now has taken over 3.5 years. It was delayed with COVID and all kinds of other
Okay, yeah,
things, but generally about 2 years to do the.
2 years.
Yeah.
So, is this the last book?
This is the last of that series. Yes.
Series, yeah.
This one is just an offshoot
Offshoot,
that came
yeah.
out in 2020.
So the last one, who's with the which is with the editor, took 3 years.
No, the one that's in between.
Um,
Oh, the one that's with the editor right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it took about 3.5 years.
3.5 years.
And she should finish by the end of the month, and then we'll hope that I can get
I'm
out.
sure she will finish. I know her.
No, she will finish. I
Jenny.
just hope she doesn't say, "Oh, it's terrible, throw it away."
Comes in red. Throw this,
Yeah,
rewrite this.
that's right.
Put this in
So
the back.
that's why I can't say it's out right away. You know, we've got to
Yes.
see what she says.
Knowing Jenny, I'm telling you.
Yeah, she'll get after it. I know
Yeah.
that. I know that.
Okay, so the last one took about 3.5 years, and
Mhm.
these about a year, maybe
About 2
two.
years, each
2
of
years.
those. Yes.
Okay, so when you're writing these, do you do like planning, plotting, or anything, or you just start writing and go visit town and come up with ideas? How do you do?
I generally know how the story is going to go because I know the people become alive to me. And so I
Okay.
know generally how it's going to go, but I'm doing research as I go along. I don't do all the research first
Okay.
and then stop and write. And as I go along, I'll come up with, well, what kind of machinery did they have? What kind of
Yeah.
things did they have? And I'll stop and have to dig and dig and dig because something will come up that I don't expect.
Mhm.
But I don't do just a cold outline. I have a general idea of how it's going to go.
Yeah.
And quite often it takes off on its own and things happen that I had not really expected.
Of course, you find
And
something out,
yeah,
and then
yeah.
something
And the
else.
characters do things. They die and they get all kinds of trouble and things that I don't really expect.
Oh, okay.
That's
That's why
what
it takes
goes.
2 years.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah, you got to do the research. You got to come back, and
that's
then
right.
yeah. And the last time we met, you said you take long walks.
Yes, I walk
And
2 miles.
talking to yourself.
Well, I do it out loud. I don't think I do it out loud.
No.
I've never had anyone mention that. I walk for 2 miles, brisk walk each morning,
Uh-huh.
and I think about it just comes alive to me while I'm walking. And many times, new ideas or new understandings come
Uh-huh.
while I'm walking. It's a way I clear my head or fill my head. I don't know what I'm doing, but it satisfies me.
Yeah, that's good.
And I walk in my neighborhood, so
Everybody knows you. Oh, that's the lady.
that's
right?
that crazy lady
That's the
who
lady.
mumbles to herself.
That's it. Oh, she's walking. Watch. I got a question. So let's say that you're writing this book,
Mhm.
and do you come up with ideas to write the next book and the next book and take notes? And when this is finished, then you jump in the next one?
Sometimes I do. Right now, that's where I am with this book that is with the editor,
Uh-huh.
being edited with Jenny.
Jenny?
I've got another one just going crazy to follow it, and it's coming in my. I've gotten some things set out to read to get some details, but right now the story is just ginning in my head, and the people are continuations of the story that I've already written.
Okay.
And so it's beginning to work. I feel sure there will be another one right after it.
Tinkering and bouncing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the it's just coming alive like a movie.
So
That's what happening.
if that happens, do you like speak with people? Hey, I got this idea. I want you to, listen to me and just bounce some ideas off of people, or
No.
no?
I mention it sometimes, but generally, I don't think people are much interested in my. Maybe they are,
Well, I'm
but
sure they are.
I am
Yeah.
I have been until just the last year, and we've kind of dissolved because of COVID, in a critique group,
Uh-huh.
and with those people, we bounce ideas off.
Uh-huh.
We met every other week for a number of years, and then during COVID we met online. And now they've all finished their books. And so we've kind of laid off for a few months. I'm sure we'll get back again. But now with those people, I talk about it.
Yeah.
But just with general people, I don't.
You know.
Well, they get impatient. They start saying, well, when's the book done? When's the book done? And
that's a little bothersome.
Yeah, you can't get it clear to people that it's not going to be done till it's done.
Yeah.
And I have to be satisfied before I'll even send it to an editor.
Yeah. But one way or another, you do have some people to bounce ideas.
Oh,
and
yeah.
You just share.
Yeah, in this critique group I do. There are about 6 of us. Yeah, and they all publish, and they all will rip apart. We give each time we meet, one person has 30 pages that they leave with the group ahead of time, and they look at it and talk about it.
Okay.
And then ahead of time, before a book is written, we will talk about ideas that we have for a book.
So somebody starts a book, and every 30 pages puts it in, share, and then he gets or she gets ideas. That's nice. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So is that the only way you better yourself, or do you do any other things?
Well, I do a lot of reading of other people's work, trying to get a sense of how they write, how they express themselves, and that's one of the things I do. Then, of course, I do all the research, trying to improve what I know about the era, because I'm really a nut for not writing made up history. I don't like made up stories.
Yes, but you make them up.
I make them up. I don't want to change the history. I put characters in the history. That's what I like to do.
So, how long have you been writing?
Well, I started writing in 1970.
1970?
When I was raising my children, I started writing a family humor column.
Okay.
And I wrote that for almost 7 years while my children were growing up. But at the same time, I was writing little short stories that were published primarily in Great Britain. I don't know why they didn't like them here, but they would pick them up.
Oh, that's amazing.
And so that's what I did during that period. And then I moved to Austin in 1977 and started writing first historical markers, the narratives for historical markers. And then I began writing articles about the markers, and they were picked up by the Historical Commission, Texas Historical Commission. They put that together in a book. And then I decided to write about the good history in little bitty towns around Austin. And when I got to the first town, I realized nobody knew where the Confederate Arms Factory was located. Little bitty tiny building, not any larger than this room. And so I realized I need to give directions. So it ended up, it was a guidebook. And it sold very well. And so the University of Texas Press was interested. Once I had a successful book, they were interested. And they published 3 of those books. And they were guidebooks for various areas of Texas. And but it was just the story of those communities and the characters, infamous and famous characters in these towns.
There are so many of them in Texas.
Yeah.
Right?
So anyway, I wrote 5 nonfiction books before I started historical fiction.
Okay. Yeah. And you started in 1972?
1970 with just writing the little family humor columns and short stories. And then my first book that was a guidebook came out in 1980. I'm a slow learner.
Well, I came to this country in 1982.
Did you really?
Yes.
Oh, you needed my guidebooks if you were going to get around Texas.
Believe me, that wouldn't have made any difference because I couldn't speak English. Not one word.
But you can't even tell that. You don't even have an accent.
Yeah.
You're just great.
And then I started having this really heavy accent, and then it turned out to be a little bit more Americanized, and everybody was just so amazed. They kept asking me, "So, are you from New York?"
Yeah.
It's like, no.
That's great.
And everything disappeared.
Yeah.
And this is it. All
well, it's great.
Yeah.
You're Americanized.
Yes.
Yes. We'd never know that.
Oh, the whole family is like that.
Yeah.
I mean, when we speak, and everybody would be like, "Who was born here? You?" You know, it's like no, nobody was born here.
That's amazing. It's
Yeah.
wonderful that you've got an ear and you can
Yes.
hear it.
Yes.
I don't have an ear.
Yes.
I just talk.
Yeah, I sometimes make some fun things like Texas accent and
Uh-huh.
you know all these.
So you can do that.
Oh yeah, people would laugh.
Yes, yes. Well, people still make fun of my accent, and see, I don't hear it. But I've even had people I have not seen in years hear my voice and recognize me. If
Uh-huh.
that's terrible.
That's it. That's it. Okay, so uh, let's just say you've been writing since 1970s,
Yes,
and it's 2023 now.
yes.
My question,
I
or
started when I
one
was
thing,
3 years old.
ah, okay, that was 10 years ago, right?
That's right.
So, what would be the most important, the valuable recommendation you would make to a newly starting author?
Well, first of all, don't give up,
Oh,
and don't listen to people who say, "Well, you haven't made it yet, so you
uh-huh.
might as well give up." I was told that, and I didn't give up. I kept writing.
You were told that?
Yes.
Oh,
Uh,
terrible.
if you haven't made it yet, so why don't you give up? But I kept on, and so I
Yeah.
did. I kept working at it, and now I've read. I'm waiting for my 12th book to be published. So
12th book to be published.
yes.
Yes.
So
So your recommendation or
do
one thing,
not give
don't
up.
give up.
That's right. And then don't love your writing so much that you can't rewrite. You know, it's
Oh,
like your children. When you've written something, you love those words and that
uh-huh.
construction, and that's the way it is. And that's the good thing about, for instance, this critique group I was in,
Uh-huh.
or this editor that has my manuscript right now. You just have to hold your heart when they say your babies sound awful. Those words don't fit, or whatever it is.
Uh-huh.
So, and it takes tough hide to do that.
Yes.
And then when it's published, it takes a lot of courage to put it out there and let other people read it
Yeah.
and maybe not like it.
Yeah.
You
Sometimes
know,
people make awful comments.
yeah. Some people say all kinds of things, and
Yes.
so that's what I believe in, is just staying with it and not giving up.
Yes. Okay. That's the word
Hmm.
from you.
That's it.
Don't give up. Keep banging.
Hmm. That's right.
Yeah. Okay. So when you first started, 1970s,
Hmm.
that doesn't really count for writing a
Mm-mm.
12.
Mm-mm.
When you started getting
I did
serious.
write a novel during that time,
Oh, you did?
but it was not published until 2012, I guess. I put it away and just didn't go on with it
Okay.
uh, because I just didn't have any courage to do it. You
Ah.
know, I wasn't
Now,
going to make it.
now you're telling the new authors and have the courage.
Have the courage. That's right.
Yes.
Don't give up.
Don't give up.
Hmm.
Yeah, so when you first started, did your family say anything? You know, don't do this or do this
Hmm.
or
Well,
whatever?
that's where I heard this. This is where I heard you're not making it, so why don't you give up?
Ah.
Uh, that husband divorced me.
Okay. See you. Bye.
Yeah, yeah, he did.
Yeah.
And so that was a great thing that happened. And
I
then I
was gonna
came to
say, well,
Austin.
well, maybe he'll watch this video and see, you know, he's sorry.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
okay.
Okay, so those are my questions
Hmm.
actually. And do you want to add anything else to this conversation?
No, I've enjoyed it very much, and I really, really appreciate you
Yes.
taking time
Oh,
to see me and
absolutely.
talk about my
Yes.
books. I'm
Yeah.
delighted.
This is the one. Okay, and
Yes.
there's one in between.
Yeah.
Yes. And by the way, Waters Plantation. The Waters is the last name.
Uh-huh.
And this is about after 9/11,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Well, I thank you very much. I really do appreciate you coming here.
Thank you.
I know how crowded it is outside in Mopac.
That's
It's
right.
rock
That's
fun.
right.
Yes.
It's really crowded, but I
Yes.
got the speed lane, and so I came fast.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. I'm going to put some great views and spots on of this great library. This is the Central Library, also Central Library. You'll see it. Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Welcome to Self-Publishing Authors, home for candid talks and honest recommendations, from book editing to book marketing, from author journeys to inspirations. Hosted by Gurhan Demirkan.